Alrighty, welcome back to another Wisco Fanatics Wednesday. We are back to being live on Wednesday after a brief Thursday show last week, with last Wednesday being Christmas. So today, on New Year's Day, we are going to be discussing just the Milwaukee Bucks. So no Badger games over the last week. So Mike gets a week off from talking about basketball. The Badgers will be back in action on Friday. But we do have 3 Milwaukee Bucks games to discuss, and then we are also going to give the trade types of players that we would like to see the Bucks trade for, and then we're going to give some examples of trades that we would like to see the Bucks look into or trade for that fit those types of players. So we're going to start with the recaps, and then we'll discuss some trades, and then we're also going to discuss some of the narratives surrounding the Milwaukee Bucks. We each have 3 kind of some stuff that's like we need to just fact check some of these things before they're being thrown out as constantly as they are. So we'll start with the recaps. We'll discuss some narratives, and then we'll discuss some trade targets. All Milwaukee Bucks today.
Welcome to another live episode of the Wisco Fanatics Show, where we discuss the Packers, Bucks, Brewers, Badgers football, and basketball from an optimistic perspective. Wisco Fanatics is brought to you by Cardboard Legacy, Wisconsin's most complete sports card shop. Buy, sell, grade, and consign all at their location in Oshkosh.
Alrighty, so we are traditionally bad news first kind of guys, where we usually start with the bad and then discuss the good. So we get to do that with the Bucks this week. And we start with the 2 losses, starting with the game against the Nets. No Dame, no Giannis yet for this one. So let's start with this was what, Thursday. Friday night?
Thursday, I think.
Was Thursday? Thursday, Saturday, Tuesday? That sounds right.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
All right, let's start with the Bucks and Nets.
Okay. Yeah, so this is the 3rd straight game without Damian Giannis, as previously mentioned. Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton, and Bobby Portis had some pretty good games in this one. Brook Lopez had 10-plus points in each of his last 5 games, so he was on a pretty good streak of putting the ball into the hoop, and including 41 in the last 2 games if you include this next game. He had a spurt of 11 straight points scored in the second quarter, but he only scored 2 points in the second half. So I feel like that was, an area where they could look to improve, is try to give Brook the ball a little bit more when Dame and Giannis are out. Make him more of a focal point on offense, especially with Chris still kind of being on a minutes restriction, which, we're going to talk about Chris Middleton coming up here for people that are interested. There's going to be some crazy good
we're going to talk a lot about Chris Middleton today.
Yeah, there's going to be some context added. But once his minute restriction is up, he's going to be fantastic, and this Bucks team is going to skyrocket, in my opinion. But in terms of how they scored, we scored 14 points off the drive. So without your 2 best players that can break down a defense, and Tyler's been using the word gravity a lot lately, and I've started to add it into my vocabulary when talking about basketball. Without your 2 biggest gravity players, it's tough to, get to the rim and have open shots, right? Catch and shoot, we had 30 points off of that. Brook Lopez was tremendous in that area. He was 4 for 5 from 3, 4 for 5 on catch and shoot situations. So he was knocking down his shots. So to me, that tells me if we would have had either of them, the Bucks probably win this game pretty easily, in my opinion. In terms of pull-up game, we scored 29 points. Gary Trent Jr. scored 10 points on the pull-up, and he shot 80%. So he was really good from the pull-up. He's starting to get his legs under him. I think he had some good games off the bench. He had some rough games. He started the year kind of rough. And then after he had some good games, he started, teetering back to the rough side. And, that's just a wave you got to ride, right? And now he's back into a good groove. He's got his feet under him, and his legs look good right now. In terms of paint points, we scored 18 paint points. This is the one area I have a gripe with Brook Lopez in this game and Bobby Portis. They both missed a few bunnies. Very easy ones that would have, won this game for the Milwaukee Bucks, in my opinion. In terms of rebounding, the rebounding was pretty even, honestly. We didn't give up too many second chance points, didn't give up an egregious number on the offensive rebound section either. So the only thing that I have here is that Brooklyn got hot in the 4th quarter. They shot 11-19 from the field, 7-11 from 3, compared to the Bucks, who shot 8 of 18, which really isn't bad, honestly, and 4 of 10 from 3. They made a couple more 3-pointers, which, got them going, got them talking. And I just have one question. Why are we double-teaming Ben Simmons when the game is on the line on a 3-point line?
So
That's a good question to ask. I will leave it to you.
Doc Rivers talked about it after the game, and it was AJ Green that was not supposed to stay doubled there. AJ Green was supposed to rotate over to Cam Johnson. Just AJ Green in general, not his best game. And I understand it's, AJ Green is a player that we hold, as a future probably starter, but he's a rotational player now. And it's one game. So we're not going to sit here and say, AJ Green needs to be benched or have his minutes taken away or anything. So when I'm saying these things, it's for me to look at it and be like, okay, this is the things that AJ Green can learn to not repeat in the future.
Yeah.
So he was 2 for 7 on threes, which is rough. That's obviously his biggest asset is his shooting. I did see, unfortunately, AJ Green out of position on both sides of the ball. Offensively, there was one possession where he kind of ran into Chris Middleton as Chris is trying to move around while he's got the ball in his hands. The fourth quarter, he took a transition pull-up three-pointer with about 20 seconds on the shot clock. On a day that you're 2 for 7 from 3, that's not the day to pull those.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're having like a 4 for 5 day and the Bucks are up 5, fucking let it fly. But on a day where you're 2 for 7, those are the ones where it's like, all right, let's wait for some reinforcements here.
Agreed.
He still good on ball defense. I will not take that away from him at all. But he's got to work on his team defense, similarly to what I talked about with Ajax and Ryan Rollins last week.
I agree.
The minute 37 seconds left possession, 3.4 seconds on the shot clock. He catches the inbound, and he's looking to pass. Like, that ball, it's got to go up. You don't have time to make a pass there. 48 seconds, and that's when he didn't get back to Cam Johnson defensively. And then Ryan Rollins ran into Cam Johnson, and that became a 4-point play.
Yep.
The other thing too, this was defensively as well. I think it was Brooke Lopez and AJ Green had Cam Johnson double teamed just inside half court, and AJ Green, being the higher man, let Cam Johnson spin out of the double team. That's a position thing. And it's, again, I'm not saying that AJ Green sucks at defense or anything like that. I'm just saying it's opportunities to learn. Just things that weren't executed now that I have full faith that the Bucks video people will be like, here's what you did, here's how to fix it so it doesn't happen in the future. So I'm not dogging AJ Green or anything like that. Yeah. As a team, 3-point shooting started 1 for 6 in the first quarter, 7 for 12 in the second quarter. There's no coincidence that's when they started to their lead up. 2 for 9 in the third quarter and ended up losing the third quarter by 2 points. And then they were 5 for 11 in the fourth, but only 8 of 18 on field goals. So they shot better on threes than they did on twos. Overall, as a team, 15 to 38, 39.5%. That's not bad at all. This was unfortunately a trend. We need guys to hit the put away shots.
Yeah.
There was a couple chances. Bobby Portis and AJ Green both had a couple of chances to hit some shots that would have felt like daggers. And those are the ones that they weren't able to knock down. Unfortunately, for one of those two, it's kind of a trend, unfortunately. But turnovers and second chance points. Bucks had 22 turnovers. 7 of them were by Chris Middleton. I'm going to come back to that. 7 in the first quarter, 13 for the rest of the game is a little bit better. Obviously, you're on pace for 28 turnovers, and finishing with 22 is what it is. Ryan Rollins still needs full court work as far as ball handling goes. He needs to be able to handle 3/4 court pressure with the ball in his hands. Overall, just a couple bad passes. Offensive fouls count as turnovers, so there was 4 offensive fouls in this game. And then the other thing, second chance points. The Nets scored 34 points off turnovers and 13 second chance points. That's 47 out of their 111 points they scored. That's 42.3% of their total.
Yeah.
So in my mind, that's just, not executing. That leads to over 40% of the Nets points.
Yeah.
That's what the Nets score 111. I looked at it and I counted the games where they played without Dame and Giannis, but I also counted the first game from after the NBA Cup. The Bucks went 2-2 I'm not like super mad at it playing without Dame and Giannis. They had Dame for one of those games, but without him for the other 3.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing with just the game in general, transition, got to finish your layups as well. You mentioned guys missing some bunnies. That's an opportunity too, where the Bucks had some chances to put some teams away and just kind of missing some ones you would expect them to make.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to end on Chris Middleton. So he had 7 turnovers. With Dame and Giannis both being out, Chris Middleton becomes the lion's share ball handler. We just talked about Ryan Rollins not being the greatest at handling full court pressure. DeLon Wright hasn't been, a big factor. Chris Middleton is your next ball handler.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that part of it as far as context goes. One of his turnovers counts from the offensive foul. One of them was called in the last seconds of the game where they're just letting the clock run out. So that counts as a turnover. And then I think they gave him a turnover as well. I looked through the entire play-by-play. I only found 6 turnovers. So I think when AJ Green was giving him that handoff, when that shot clock was rolling down, I think they gave Chris a turnover for that as well.
Yeah.
And in my mind, that's more on AJ Green.
No, 100%.
So I'm kind of looking at it as more like 6 turnovers, which is still a lot. But offensive foul, so it's essentially 5 turnovers, and offensive foul, and actually be 4 turnovers, and offensive foul, and 2 shot clock violations that aren't really on him. So, again, context. I'm not just saying, we need to explain away all of his turnovers or anything, or that he doesn't have a problem taking care of the ball, because he did make a couple bad passes. But we'll talk about some of the other stuff. He makes far more good and great passes than he does bad ones.
Agreed.
So he finished this game, 21 points. He had 12 of them in the fourth quarter. He was 8 of 13 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3. Just, 26 minutes turns in a quick 21, 5, and a steal.
It's efficient.
Yeah, but he's washed. Sure, we'll talk about that. All right, let's go to the Bucks and Bulls on Saturday.
Yeah, so this is one where Dame returned, and he looked rusty in the first half, especially. He started to get it going in the second half. But I'm going to start off with Chris Middleton. Middleton scored 17 of his 21 points in the first half. This is, again, where I wrote down, as soon as this minute restriction is off, Chris Middleton is going to be unhinged.
He got up to 27 and a half minutes this game after his ankle got stepped under.
That's true. That's a good point. I should have wrote that down as well. But
gotcha.
I just think he's in a good groove right now. He's playing in such a good rhythm that he just looks like he's under control. I mean, 21, 6, and 4 of 8 of 15 from the field, 4 of 6 from 3. I mean, what more can you ask for from a guy coming back from double ankle surgery? Hasn't played a bunch in the regular season. As Tyler has brought up, he's played in the playoffs the last couple of years. But, he's coming back and he's looking good. Bobby Portis, not very efficient in this one. Brook Lopez, not very efficient in this one, 9 of 22. And Dame, not very efficient in this one. He scored 18 of his 29 points in the second half. So I wrote down Dame, Brook, and Bobby, right? Together they had 65 points, 22 rebounds, 19 assists. That is 59% of the team's points, 51% of the team's rebounds, and 70% of the team's assists. That's good stuff. But there's some problems with it. They took 56% of the team's field goals and 60% of the team's three-point shots. They shot 38% from the field overall and 30% from the three-point line overall. So when you look at the stuff that they're able to do together, yes, they were always going to take more shots, especially with Giannis out, right? And Chris on a minutes restriction. But when they're not making those shots and being efficient in the amount of, shots that they're getting, the amount of times they're touching the ball, that's how you lose games like this. And it sucks to say, but it is what it is. When driving, we scored 21 points. The only thing I wrote down here under this section was it is amazing to me the calls that Damian Lillard doesn't get. I don't think I'll ever not be surprised at the call. Like, he'll get slapped in the face, and then he'll just be like, hello, I got slapped in the face. And the ref's just like, play on. And I'm like, what are we doing here? In terms of catch and shoot, we scored 34 points on catch and shoots. That's an improvement from the Nets game. We could have been way more efficient from the catch and shoot area. Brook Lopez, 11 points. He shot 28.6% on catch and shoots. Excuse me. Bobby and Dame, they scored 6 points. They both shot 33.3% from catch and shoot. AJ Green, 2 points. He shot 33%. So that's 4 guys who are your main catch and shoot guys in this game and the highest that 3 of them got was 33%. So you're shooting 1 out of every 3. It's not a way to win a game.
Much rather be around like 40%.
I agree. Dame was rusty in this one. He had 3 points from the pull-up area. We scored 29 total as a team. He shot 14% from pull-ups. Gary Trent Jr., back-to-back good games. He shot 75%. And in the paint, Bobby Portis, 25% from the field. Not very good.
Yeah, it's tough for Bobby Portis. This game and the Nets game were 2 of them where he had opportunities to hit opponent mood killers. He missed 3 of them in this game, in my opinion, and 2 versus the Nets. Just, chances where he had opportunities to essentially take all momentum away from the opponents and just wasn't able to do so. Between Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis, they were combined 5 of 18 on threes in this game. Also, it's 27.8%.
Yeah.
As a team, the Bucks were 15 for 45 at 33.3%. That's not great. If you take the bigs out of it, you're looking at 10 for 27, which isn't much better, but it's a smidge better. Damian Lillard obviously wasn't super efficient. He was also 33.3% from 3. You mentioned the 29 points. You mentioned the little bit of rust and got it, having to get his conditioning back, which I think is absolutely a thing, especially when you factor in, hearing Taurean Prince and Chris Middleton and Damian Lillard talk about how sick they were. Like, I'd totally get being winded for your first game back.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when it's, a thing where you're constantly coughing and stuff like that. Like, your respiratory system's going to be not feeling great.
Yeah, it's
when you're going to be trying to come back and run on a basketball court a whole bunch.
Mm-hmm.
But 2 things with Damian Lillard. First of all, 12 assists, 0 turnovers.
That's a good call.
That's an amazing thing to have. The other thing is just the Bucks as a team didn't have their best offense, especially from the bigs. The thing that bothers me, and it bothered Doc Rivers to the point that he talked about it in his post-game press conference as well, Damian Lillard scored 11 straight points at one point in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And then didn't touch the ball again. I shouldn't say didn't touch the ball, but didn't take any more shots after that. So that's just something that Doc said he's got to work on and the team has to work on, making sure Damian Lillard is getting the ball. Because that's what he's here for. He's here to score. Especially in late game situations. That's what he brought. Looking at it, Bucks only had 7 turnovers. That is an improvement from the Nets game. Only allowed 10 points off turnovers. So if there is one thing you can hang your hat on as being better, as a team-wise, points off turnovers and just turnovers in general was a massive improvement. Okay. Let's go to the fun game. Let's go to yesterday's game. Down 19 points, and I'm glad that I didn't go on social media during that stretch of the game where the Bucks were down 19 points because they did end up coming back to win. So, it would be annoying just to see people whining about it midway through the third quarter, as if we haven't discussed on this show that no lead is safe in the NBA.
Especially the NBA.
Multiple times we've had this discussion that no lead is safe.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, that they came back to win, and that I wouldn't go and see those same posts and then get real petty.
Oh, yeah.
Because the temptation is there.
Oh, it's always there.
Aren't you glad you talked before the game was over? Like, we've discussed this during football games, baseball games, complaining in the third inning of games. Like, what benefit does it serve you to complain about it? Literally none. We'll have a conversation about that maybe later this evening as well. But give me your takeaways from yesterday afternoon's game.
Yeah, so me and you were actually talking during this game, and you pointed out first that Giannis looked rusty, and he did. And it goes back to, the Bulls game, talking about Damian Lillard. He looked rusty. He had to knock some rust off. The legs weren't there. And people think that these guys just play basketball and they're not human for some reason. Same thing with football players. And they're apparently, just because they've put the jersey on before, that they're just supposed to just remember what they're doing. And for me, this kind of sparks a conversation of people comparing their jobs to professional athletes' jobs, which is what they do consistently with pay rate.
Yeah, don't do that.
It is not the same.
Yeah, don't do that.
You rolling out of your bed, driving your Ford F-150 into your factory job, where you sit there and you're a machine operator is not the same thing as somebody who has to be physically active, because you haven't been physically active in 2.5 years. That's your own problem.
It's not the same thing. Like, you're talking like there's you know, to use the machine operator example, there's hundreds of thousands of those.
Yeah.
There's 450 players in the NBA.
Yeah.
And there's probably about 4 that are in the tier of Giannis.
Yes. It's 4 is probably where I'd put it too.
I'd maybe even go 3.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah. You are not the Giannis Antetokounmpo of factory workers.
Yeah. And if you are, congratulations. I'm very happy for you. But that still doesn't give you an excuse to go on social media and cry and complain about the Bucks maybe, losing a game on December 31st. But anyways, Giannis ended up looking like Giannis, quite frankly, in the second half, and that sparked the Bucks bench. It sparked the starters, and the Bucks turned it around. But the thing I wanted to talk about is last year when the Bucks were losing games to the Pacers, and the Pacers would be losing and they wouldn't be saying a word. They'd be quiet as a mouse, and then eventually they would take the lead, and then apparently they had a lot to say.
What do we call that?
That's a front runner.
That's a front runner.
So Giannis hits a mid-range jumper. Did not write down the exact time, but it was in the third quarter. He hits a mid-range jumper. Was it the third quarter that I'm talking about?
It was the third quarter, yeah.
I didn't write down the time when he hit it, but he started.
Are you talking about the one to tie the game? Or are you talking about the one that was when the lead was starting to dwindle?
When the lead was starting to dwindle, he started talking real heavy.
That kicked off the 7-0 run.
Yes.
No, 12-0 run. Sorry, 12-0 run to cut the lead to 7.
Okay, well, Giannis started talking real heavy after that mid-range jumper. Said, "Don't give me that shot." So he's talking while losing.
Yeah.
And then if you talk while losing and you come back and win and you hit the same type of shot, then you're allowed to talk. Yep. That's how that works.
Yep.
All right, my cold is getting bad today. So Giannis, all talk, all game, all second half. He was amazing. The bench was a little bit better having Dame and Giannis back. They shot 18 of 38, 8 of 17 from 3. So the 8 of 17 from 3, tremendous. A lot of that is Gary Trent Jr., who was really good yesterday. Hit 2 big-time shots towards the end of this game. And, that's all I have on this one.
Looking at it, I'm going to throw in A.J. Green as well because he had a bounce-back game. Looking at it combined, Gary Trent Jr. and A.J. Green were 7 for 11 on threes. If you add in Damian Lillard, those 3 were 10 for 20.
That's pretty damn good.
That is, everybody else was 2 for 13. So as a team, they were 36.4% from the three-point line. That's essentially league average. I'm going to talk about some threes stuff in a little bit later here. Turnovers, the Bucks had 12. They forced 16, allowed 12 points off turnovers, scored 19, so they did win that category. Also, offensive rebounds, the Bucks had 13, turned that into 21 second chance points. Love to see that. One big thing I had with the first half was that the Pacers had 16 free throws. The Bucks only had 8. So for me, an emphasis would be for the Bucks to get to the free throw line. They did a better job of that. In the second half, they shot 16 free throws in the second half. The Pacers still got there 14 times in the second half and outshot the Bucks by 6 at the free throw line, but only made 1 more. So not a huge advantage there. The biggest thing for this game was it was the first time we got to see Giannis, Dame, and Chris all together in the starting lineup.
Yes.
You've already brought up Giannis being rusty in the first half, and even a little bit of the third quarter, I thought his shot selection was a little bit iffy. But after that, it locked in, and the fourth quarter locked in the entire time. Not to mention him and Chris were both dealing with foul trouble, but Giannis in the first half, 4 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 turnovers. Second half, 26 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. He finished with 30, 12, and 5.
Yeah, he was good.
Yeah. Dame only scored 9 points. Not his most efficient game either, but I think the Pacers were kind of keying on him a little bit, especially defensively. He finished with 9 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals. And then Chris finished with 15 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists.
Mm-hmm.
If Chris is giving you anything more than 18, 5 and 5, 18, 6 and 6, if he's giving you, 15, 6 and 7, give me that. If he's giving you 14, 6 and 8, like anything where he takes a couple points away, but his assist numbers are going up, that's more points for the team. So I'm that's where player efficiency rating comes in, stuff like that.
Yep.
So I'm not mad at Chris Middleton for scoring 15 points. You look at the game, the way that this game went. 2 of our 3 best players didn't have their best games. Like Chris was okay from the field, but the Bucks scored 120 points.
Yeah.
In a game where 2 of their 3 best players weren't at their best.
And Giannis was bad in the first half.
And Giannis was bad in the first half. And 2 of those 3 were dealing with foul trouble. 2 of those 3 had 4 fouls each.
Yeah, dude.
120 points.
Telling you, dude.
Man, we've been talking about there being a chance of a 140-point game. If all 3 of them are hitting at the same time, shit, the Bucks might have a game this season where they score 150.
Yeah, dude, you're talking about Brook Lopez maybe having an efficient game during that. AJ Green's hitting threes. Gary Trent has an opportunity to hit threes. We've seen Taurean Prince be hot. I mean, the offense will be fine.
9 for 11 games too.
Yeah, the defense. Never mind. You know what? I'm not going to go in there because I'm going to talk about Greg Buckner. So
we're going to get there too.
Yeah, I'll leave that be. I was just about to go on a tangent.
All right.
I'll let it be.
Is there anything else you wanted to say on the games from last week?
Nets loss was a little bit tough. The Nets just got hot in the fourth quarter. Bulls, okay, good for them. They won a game against the Bucks. Congratulations. I'm really happy that we're beating the Pacers this year because they were becoming very, very annoying. It's like when the little brother beats the older brother in a video game one time out of the 50 times that they play, and he starts and he holds on to that forever. Like, I beat you. It's like, dude, what about the 49 other times?
Okay, bud, you got it.
Right. That's kind of what it felt like to me.
So the Bucks play tomorrow night.
Yep.
They play Saturday night against Portland. They play Monday. So we will have 3 games between now and next Wednesday. Against Brooklyn again. So they got a chance to get a little bit of redemption there. Then they play Portland and they play at Toronto on Monday night. So we will have those 3 games next week. Now we're going to transition here into some Milwaukee Bucks and narratives. So just kind of some of those things where, it's people are just kind of saying these things and not actually looking into them.
Yeah.
Or things that people aren't talking about enough and why they should be. So where do you want to start?
I say, so how I wrote it down is I went Chris. So let's start with Chris. Middleton. And then I'll go to my Dame section after that.
All right. Do you want to give the context or do you want to give the numbers first?
I just want to give the reason why I picked what I picked, and then you can give numbers and you can put that little extra spice on the top. Like when people put the sprinkles on their ice cream. It's good.
I got you. I got the numbers for you.
Okay. So I wrote down as Chris Middleton being the vocal leader. So my reasoning for this is now this requires people to have to actually sit down and watch the games.
Yes.
But when you watch the games, who is the guy that is barking out directions on offense and defense? Consistently on both sides. Now, we see Dame do it from time to time. We see Giannis do it from time to time. We see Doc over there. They always show Doc. He's the coach. But who is the one guy when he comes into the game that everybody looks at and they're just like, he is in charge. I am the captain now. I have literally watched Chris Middleton call entire defensive plays on side outs on defense. He was talking to Bobby and AJ Green. And he was telling them, this guy's going to come down. This guy's going to come up. He's going to loop around. He's literally pointing all of this stuff out. Like, hey, you come here. You loop around here. You go over here. And literally the ref handed the ball to the opposing player. And that is literally what happened. And I was like, holy shit, he just called the entire play. Now, another thing why I think he's the vocal leader is because who did they hand the ball to throw the ball in? Who's the guy that does all the passing in?
Yeah, you're right.
Chris Middleton.
Yeah.
Now, when the guy that's throwing the ball in, the coach usually trusts that guy's basketball IQ.
Yeah.
They think he's a good passer. They think he's going to make a very educated guess. And Giannis is very good at the lob passes to Giannis from the out of bounds, the side out area.
Yeah.
I mean, out of bounds too. Baseline out of bounds. But the side outs, he's very good at the passes there as well. He's the one directing traffic on all this stuff. Offense, defense. So when you're watching the game, I want you to contextually watch this stuff now. Because this is the point where Tyler and I are at with watching games. We watch little things like this, where the Bucks will turn the ball over. And Tyler talked about this last week, I believe. You talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some miscommunications on a pass every once in a while. It's just a dap up and a talk, right?
Yep.
So Chris Middleton is the one barking out all the orders when he comes into the game, which is why I really like when he gets minutes with Bobby Portis, because he can keep Bobby engaged.
Yeah.
That's really why I love him with Bobby. So that's why I think Chris Middleton is a little bit underrated in the vocal leader aspect. So definitely watch that closely.
He's like the coach on the floor.
Yeah.
What I would say too is when there's timeouts on the floor and they're going to commercial, hang out before you see David Gruber. Like watch as the guys are going to the bench, watch who's talking and who they're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a lot of times where you'll see Dame Giannis talking.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see Chris, he'll pull guys aside and he'll be pointing out and, doing the X's and O's on the floor as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that you brought up with the turnovers, it's a high five and they're moving on to the next possession. It's not about, trying to blast people for making the mistakes. It's about trying to understand the intention which they made the mistake with.
Mm-hmm.
There was a pass last week that I brought up that Chris Middleton was trying to throw a pass to Gary Trent. It was low and it went between his legs. Gary Trent Jr. knows that Chris is trying to make a kick out to Gary Trent Jr. to shoot a three. That's why they brought him here. So Gary Trent understands the intention with which Chris Middleton was making that pass. Mm-hmm. It's not, Chris made another turnover. Now we need to stop letting him handle the ball. That's just dumb. Understand the intention. So now I'm going to give you the numbers.
No, I love this.
Chris Middleton is washed. He's so bad. We should trade him for CJ McCollum. First of all, no.
Yeah, no.
Not only does that make the Bucks smaller, gives them less chemistry, makes them worse on defense. I mean, everything you just talked about. But looking at Chris Middleton, he has made 7 or more field goals in 4 of his last 5 games, made 3 or more field goals, or 3 or more threes in 4 of his last 5 games. And his efficiency since entering the starting lineup the last 5 games, he's 36 of 68 from the field. That's 52.9%. He's 15 of 27 on threes. That's 55.5%.
Damn.
And 9 for 10 from the free throw line, which is 90%. So since returning to the starting lineup, 53, 55.5, 90. Now, Chris Middleton per 36-minute numbers, because I'm still seeing people being like, oh, Chris Middleton only had 15 points. He's only been playing in the mid-20s of minutes. His minute restriction has to be right around 25 to 27 based on what he's playing. In those times, if you look at his numbers per 36 minutes, he would be averaging 21.1 points, 6.6 rebounds, 8.4 assists, 1.4 steals, and 4 turnovers.
You could deal with the 4 turnovers when he's giving you everything else.
Absolutely, especially if he's giving you 8.4 assists. That's still above 2 to 1.
Yeah.
You want to know just another guy that, doesn't have the playoff performance that Chris Middleton has, at least recently?
Who?
The guy I'd compare him to is Paul George.
Ooh.
Paul George, who was given a massive contract this past offseason. You look at his per 36-minute numbers, he's playing without Joel Embiid, so he's not having to share the ball as much as Chris Middleton does playing with Giannis and Dame. Per 36 minutes for Paul George, 17.6 points, 6.3 rebounds, 5.4 assists, 2.2 steals, and 3 turnovers.
Damn. Not good.
Chris Middleton per 36 minutes is literally giving you better numbers than Paul George. Stop saying Chris is washed. It's stupid. It's dumb. It's not true. The number's literally right in your face. Chris Middleton is giving you what he's always given you.
Mm-hmm.
And doing it more efficiently. So, I mean, I'm not going to go as far as being like, yep, All-Star Chris is back, but he's playing at a high level.
He is playing at a high level. He's in a good rhythm.
All right. Which one do you want to do next?
Let me get my Dame context, and then I can get in some numbers after that. Because I have some numbers on I'm going to talk about Greg Buckner, and I'm going to talk about Lopez. So let's do all the players, and then I'll get into the coaching.
All right.
So I wanted to talk about Dame being an underrated leader. So when people watch Damian Lillard play basketball, they're usually impressed with his quick release and deep range, right? Those are the two things when you think of Damian Lillard, you're like, quick release and he shoots from really far away, right?
Yep.
He's also really, really good at his ability to break down a defense with a handle. He's a good playmaker for others, and he takes advantage of his impact on the offensive side of the floor. But the thing that people don't see is how often he's talking to the young guys on the bench. There has been a number of times this year where I've seen him sitting next to Ryan Rollins, whether he was in the game or out of the game, and he's showing Ryan Rollins, oh, this is why I did this. This is why I did this. Now, this is where when we traded for him, I thought, okay, maybe MarJon, because there was rumors of MarJon and Dame kind of getting along. I thought, okay, maybe MarJon will take that jump now. Yeah. And, unfortunately for the Bucks, that hasn't happened. But it doesn't, discredit Dame's leadership,
right.
Talking to these young players.
Right.
People, obviously they talked about Dame and Giannis's connection, right? And Dame and Giannis are always talking. Yep. And I believe because Dame wanted it so bad, and this is not a knock on Giannis, but I think because Dame wanted it so bad, I give him a little bit more credit for it starting to work out a little bit more this year. Dame was going through a lot of stuff coming into Milwaukee last year. He had a clean off season this year, and you could tell that he's not playing, with a heavy heart every night, and that makes a big impact. The person that I think that I see Dame talk to more, other than Giannis, is Brook Lopez, and those guys have some unwritten chemistry that
they really do, especially pick and roll.
Yeah, Brooks has such good screens, and again, Dame is so talented on the offensive end and he could stretch the defense. And to Brooks' credit, he can stretch the defense pretty far too. He had a heat check against the Nets.
Well. Yeah, the pick and pop works well too.
Yeah, he had a heat check against the Nets that was fucking ridiculous.
Yeah,
he was damn near the logo. I was like, oh hell no, should not be doing that. That's crazy.
Good times.
But I really appreciate Dame being a leader for this team, and I think it goes unnoticed. And one more thing I wanted to point out is they appreciate him so much as a leader that he called 2 challenges last night or yesterday afternoon. Yeah. So I wrote that down and I was like, he actually won a challenge. And I think he maybe could have won both challenges, honestly, but I don't think the refs wanted to give him the second one. I didn't think that was much of a foul. I think that was more of a play-on situation. But, they trust Damian Lillard's opinion so much. And this was on defense. I'm just talking about offense, but he won a challenge on defense yesterday.
Defensively, yeah.
So he's made a much bigger impact on defense, getting lots of tips. He's been barking out orders on both sides of the ball. So I just want people – the reason I wanted to pick these 2 things is I want people to start watching some of this stuff. Don't just watch box scores. Don't just watch shots that they make and they take. I want you to watch the nuances of this team and understand the construction of why we made moves for certain guys. So that's the stuff that we're trying to get into, the nitty-gritty stuff.
And why they keep certain guys around.
Yeah, 100%.
Like Brook Lopez.
Yes.
I like that. That's good stuff. The one that I want to give just on the player side of things, and this is kind of an NBA-wide thing more than it is strictly a Bucks narrative, but it's shooting too many threes. Mm-hmm. And I think actually the Bucks could stand to shoot a couple more threes per game. So the Milwaukee Bucks are currently 15th in attempts per game at 37.3. I've been saying during our shows for the last couple of weeks, my goal for them is to be around 40. Mm-hmm. That would put them around 6th in the league. They are currently 7th in the NBA in made threes per game at 14.5. Mm-hmm. 3-point percentage, they are 2nd in the NBA at 38.9%. So if you're making the second most percentage, I'd like to see them shooting more than, just middle of the pack. They're 15th in the NBA in attempts. If you're 2nd in the NBA in percentage, raise the attempts up, and I think that's something that can help the Bucks score, somewhere between 3 to 10-ish more points per game. It's not going to be every single game that the Bucks are going to go from averaging, 112 to 122, but it's just one of those things where if they average 112, shooting a few more threes a game that they're making at an above average percentage, mm-hmm. I think is something that can help move them farther up in scoring.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
All right. Let's talk coaches.
Let me do my Brook Lopez first.
All right.
So I'm going to do Brook Lopez, and then I'm going to talk I have Brook Lopez over here because I took so many of my notes. So I think we need to have a little bit more love for Brook Lopez, man. People want to talk about the flashy players, the Dames, the Giannis, the Chris Middletons. They want to talk about the Milk Mambas or the Dairy Bird, whatever nickname you prefer. The Gary Trents, the flashy offseason signing, Bobby Portis's. But I think Brook Lopez is a guy where he's so steady, and that's the word that I wrote down. He's so steady and so comfortable in his role that I think people kind of forget about him, and that's a little sad. I mean, he's an NBA champ, obviously, in 2021. NBA Cup champ this year. He's made all defensive team twice since signing with the Bucks. He made second team in 2020. He made all NBA first team all defense in 2023, second in defensive player of the year that year as well. He's 10th in NBA rating since signing with the Bucks in 2018, and he leads the NBA with 15.6 contests per game since that time as well. So those are things that we all know that he does. I wanted to really emphasize his blocks because he is so good over there. So in 2018, when he signed, 4th in the NBA. 2019, 2nd in the NBA. 2020, 8th in the NBA. 2021, greatest back surgery of all time.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that right now. The guy literally had no back, and a guy who just had back pain myself. Unbelievable for him to come back from that. Absolutely unbelievable. So 2021, he didn't register enough games. 2022, he came back from the back surgery, was 3rd in the NBA in blocks per game. 2023, tied for 2nd. And this year, he's 5th. On average, he blocks 2 blocks per game on average. So he just recently, against the Nets actually, became top 20 all-time in blocks per game. He is 389 from the top 10. So if he keeps his current average at 164, blocks, per season, you can get that in a season or two. So if he comes back for 2 more seasons, he could be a top 10 rim protector of all time.
Wow,
that's actually crazy when you break it down, right?
Yeah.
He's at 1972, so he's a couple away from 2,000 career blocks, so that'll be a milestone for him as well. But really, just want people to appreciate Brook Lopez, a guy who could shoot 34-foot 3-pointers, and then he could block your center on the other end. I mean, people complain about his on-ball defense, but when you use him the correct way, he's a very, very good player.
And the 2 words that you used were role and championship. Brook Lopez is a championship caliber role player.
100%.
He's obviously already shown that by being a role player on a championship team, but he's still doing the same things.
Yeah.
Just because he's not a fast, athletic center doesn't mean he's not valuable.
Yeah, he's not going to make the top 10 for dunking on somebody probably. Right. I mean, he had a couple big time dunks in the playoffs last couple of years, but he's not that guy. But he doesn't have
big Statue of Liberty dunks once in a while.
Yep, love that. Those are fun to watch though.
Yeah, especially when he gets like his elbow like here, just because he's so big, and then it's just
right.
Like if Godzilla was going to dunk a basketball, that's what Brook Lopez does.
Dude, you just gave me an idea, but keep going. Why don't you go in your doc section?
Let's talk coaches. I just want to discuss the narrative, and I still see it every time there's a loss or something that somebody just wants to complain about in general. The generic fire Doc comment comes out.
Yeah.
And the Bucks started 2-8. Obviously not ideal. They are now 17-14. 2 other guys that I want to look at in this same time frame through the first 10 games was Nick Nurse, who was also 2-8 and is now 13-17, still 4 games under 500, and Mike Budenholzer, who started 8-2. Yep. And people were like, "Oh, we shouldn't have fired Budenholzer," even though the entire Heat playoff series and the 2022-2023 season was built on fire Bud.
Mm-hmm.
The Suns and their loaded ass roster are now 15-17.
Oh.
Since the first 10 games of the season until the calendar changed, this was before the calendar even changed. We're talking about 7 weeks. November 11th is when the Bucks were 2-8 and the 76ers were 2-8 and the Suns were 10-2 or 8-2 in their 10 games. Mm-hmm. The Bucks have had an 8.5 game swing from where they were compared to Phoenix and Mike Budenholzer.
Weird.
Also Nick Nurse, who people wanted hired over Adrian Griffin, and I wanted absolutely no part of.
You were correct.
And now they have all this fucking dysfunction, but that's also based on one of their players. But That's neither here nor there. Because I'm here to talk about Doc Rivers. Now, when the Bucks were 2-8, their opponent field goal percentage, they were 17th in the NBA. Defensive efficiency, they were 23rd. And offensive efficiency, they were 19th. As they stand today, they are 4th in opponent field goal percentage. So in less than 2 months, they've gone from 17th to 4th in opponent field goal percentage. Defensive efficiency, they are 11th. They have more than halved their way to where they were. They were 23rd. Now they're 11th. And then offensive efficiency, it has been a little rough the last 3 games playing without Dame and Giannis, which I think has lowered them a little bit. But even still, they've gone from 19th to tied for 13th.
They're getting there.
They are a good month of January from being top 10 in both efficiency categories as well as opponent field goal percentage.
Yep.
But fire Doc Rivers. It's always got to be scapegoat effect. It's always got to be one person's fault, and then we'd be great if we didn't have this. All right, you want to talk about the defensive coordinator that they brought in?
Yeah. So not only does Doc get credit for righting the ship, he gets credit for wanting a guy like Greg Buckner on his coaching staff, right?
Yep.
So you were correct about November 11th. I wrote down the wins and losses, defensive rating, defensive rebound per game, steals, blocks, opponent second chance points, opponent fast break, opponent paint, and opponent turnovers. So in the 11 games from the 23rd, which is the first game of the year, and November 11th, the Bucks, like you said, 3-8. They had a 113 defensive rating. That's 18th. They averaged 35 defensive rebounds, so they were 5th. So they were good in that area. 7.4 steals, 5.4 blocks. They allowed 13 opponent second chance points. That's 7th in the NBA, so they were good in that area as well. 14.9 opponent fast break points, 10th in the NBA. Opponent paint points, 42.2, 10th in the NBA. And an area where they were bad is they allowed 18.4 opponent points off turnovers, which was 19th, right? So that was an area that Tyler really harped on, was the turnovers, and you've been on that for the last couple of years since we really started covering this.
Yep.
So I'm going to tell you the stats now, the 21 games since, and then I'm going to compare them to last year, and I'm going to tell you why Greg Buckner was such a great signing, because he really did turn this around. 21 games since then, Bucks are 15-6. That's with missing people like Chris and Dame and Giannis, and all sorts of things from sickness to illness to this guy has a hurt calf. Their defensive rating has went from 18th to 7th. Massive jump. Their defensive rebounding, they stayed 5th. They actually averaged 35.1 compared to the 35.0. So they stayed the same there. They didn't have to change much there. So Giannis definitely helps with that. But Brook Lopez, as we've talked about before, monster in the box out area. Steals, we average 7.4. We now average 8.3. We're up to 15th in the NBA in steals per game. I think that really, honestly, what I break that down to is better positioning on defense. People being
I'm with that. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, to just bat the ball down. We were at 5.4 blocks. We're at 5.2. We went down 1. We went from 13th to 14th. Opponent second chance points, we were 7th. We're the 3rd at 11.8. Opponent fast break second chance points. That's really, really good. Opponent fast break points, we did go down in this area. I just equate this, honestly, to the Bucks just kind of being an older team. It's kind of what I equate that to. And, guys in and out of the lineup. So we went from 14.9 to 16.6. So we're 23rd in that area. Opponent points in the paint, we went from 10th to 11th. So that's not bad. And we went from 19th in opponent points off turnovers to 12th. So we shaved 2.5 points off of that in that area. So that's a really good thing.
Yep.
So compared to 2023, I'm not going to give you all the numbers again. I'm just going to tell you this. We were 19th last year in defensive rating. Again, we're up to 7th. We were 3rd in defensive rebound percentage at 34.8. We actually averaged more, but we're 5th. So we got plus 0.3 on the defensive rebounds. We have plus 1.5 on the steals compared to last year. We have plus 0.2 on the blocks per game since last year. We are minus 1.9 on opponent second chance points, so that's a good thing. We're giving up plus 3 on the opponent fast break, minus 4 points on the opponent paint points, which is really good, and minus 2.3 on the points off turnover. So when you add everything up, we are plus 5.5 on all the major categories of second chance points, fast break, paint, and points off turnovers. We are plus 5.5. So when you add that in to the Bucks offense getting better with Damian Lillard and Giannis being better, Chris Middleton coming back, people getting more comfortable in their roles on offense, I think the sky's the limit for this team. And Greg Buckner has a really big print on this team in terms of positioning. So that's a good thing. Greg Buckner signing of the offseason, maybe.
I like that. That's a good thing to bring up. All right. So now as we move from narratives, we're also going to discuss some trade types of players that we would like to see the Bucks target, and then we're going to go through a couple of players in each type of player that we would like to see the Bucks target. So let's do the types first, and then we'll discuss the actual targets themselves. You want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
I just have 3 types, so I'll just rip them real quick.
All right.
So the 3 types that I'm going after is I would like a young ball handler, somebody that can just be under Dame's wing and Dame can teach him everything, and then he can kind of take over the next couple of years and just be an all-star backup point guard. I have a perimeter defender. I would love a long, lengthy perimeter defender, and then I have a paint defender. I would like another guy to rotate between Brook and Giannis, kind of keep a 3-headed monster in there at all times. So we have 2 in at all times to consistently have elite paint defense. So those are the 3 that I looked for.
So I put on here an athletic lob threat. That is something that the Bucks are reportedly looking for. So that's something I put in mind as somebody to find. And I have, I think, 2 really fun names, so I might do that one second. But the other thing that I was looking for was a defensive-minded 3, 4, or 5. The Bucks are always looking for wing defenders. Unfortunately, I couldn't really find any 3s that worked out well. I looked at a couple. I wanted to try to find a way for the Bucks to get Harrison Barnes. There might be a 3-team way to do it, but I couldn't find a way to make it work for the Bucks and the Spurs, just back and forth. Mm-hmm. And then like a guy like Tari Eason, he's another guy that I'd be interested in, but it's going to be kind of a tough way for the Bucks to figure out a way to make it work just from Bucks to Rockets. So maybe as we get closer to the trade deadline, I can try to work some of those things out and take some time to really see if there's a way I can figure it out with a 3-team deal. But for now, I have two team deals for both of these types of players that we're looking at. So if you have 3 and I have 2, I'll let you go first, and then we'll just kind of alternate from there.
Okay, I'll go. Shoot, I don't know which one's my least likely. I'll just go with my trade that I have to the Golden State Warriors. Golden State has been trying to move a guy like Kuminga for the last couple of years. He's trying to get paid, and I don't know if the Bucks can pay him. But I have Kuminga, Moses Moody, and Trace Jackson Davis. So before anybody goes crazy, his per is literally right on par with Bobby Portis's. So I have Bobby Portis, TP, Chris Livingston, and Tyler Smith for Kuminga, Moses Moody, and Trace Jackson Davis. The Warriors get Tyler Smith, a young guy who they can work on. That he's young on a rookie deal. They have Chris Livingston, who they can work on like they did with Kuminga. They get Taurean Prince. They can use a guy that could spread the floor. They struggle with 3-point shooting. They could use another versatile defender. Then they get Bobby Portis, a guy who's tough. I think they lack toughness. So I think this trade, in my opinion, when I looked at everything, I was like, this makes sense to me.
I like Trace Jackson Davis too.
Yeah, and I would love him. I think he would be the guy that I would consider a paint defender. And also, when you were talking about lob threat, I was like, he's a lob threat.
That's fair. All right. So is that for your is that for one of you? You have 2 for each of your 3?
I kind of just added 1 in on each trade is what I did.
Okay. All right. I'll go with my defensive-minded bigs. Like I said, I couldn't really find a way to get the wings that I was really liking. So I have two big men, essentially two centers. This is one that I've actually written about previously and discussed a little bit here. And it's Robert Williams III and 2 second-round picks for Bobby Portis. Essentially, the Bucks get a defensive-minded backup center and 2 second-round picks for assuming the risk that Robert Williams III carries with his injuries.
Okay.
And then, the Trailblazers, they get Bobby Portis, a guy who's going to help them score and maybe just fill seats a little bit.
Yeah. I like that.
The second one I have, this is easily my least exciting trade that I have out of the 4 that I came up with, and it's just Mason Plumlee for DeLon Wright. The Suns get a backup point guard because right now they're pretty shooting guard heavy. So they get a point guard, and then the Bucks get a sort of defensive-minded backup center. Plumlee allows a 48.6 opponent field goal percentage, which is kind of high as a field goal percentage. But when you consider the fact that he's defending essentially almost exclusively big men, you figure the NBA average is probably right around 60% for shooting in the paint or in the restricted area. So for context, Brook Lopez allows 46.6.
Okay.
So he essentially allows 2% higher field goal percentage defensively than Brook Lopez.
Actually, that trade makes a lot of sense to me. Maybe your most boring, but it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to give my second trade real quick. This one, I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but Detroit is just – they're in a weird spot, in my opinion, especially with the first guy in here, Jaden Ivey. I feel like they're in a weird spot with him. I think
like him too. I wish they could use him.
Yeah, he's a guy I think that could help, with a trade to the Bucks. You get him around Doc, you get him around Rondo, you get him around Damian Lillard. This is where I got my young ball handler. It can help reshape his career, honestly. He's quick. The Bucks get younger. I have Ivy and Jalen Duran. The Bucks have to throw in a couple – I would love Jalen Duran. Don't even get me started on that. For Bobby, Pat, and Marjan, like I said, Detroit's in a weird spot, man. If they wanted to, they could do exactly what Portland did with Bobby, and they can just flip him right away for some draft picks if they wanted to. Do the same thing with Pat. But they're in an area right now where they got Cade, and they got to get as much – firepower is physically possible to try to build this roster, because right now they're sitting in no man's land.
Yeah,
you have a guy, Jaden Ivey, who is talented as anybody else in this league, and he's not getting the playing time that he deserves. He's not getting the ball like he deserves. So Jalen Duran, good player, but again, he's going to want to get paid, and he's not going to stay in Detroit to get paid. I don't think he's going to stay there and continue losing just to get a bag. I think he'd rather get moved, get paid, and win some basketball games. I think that would be what he would want.
I think he'd sacrifice some money in exchange for a lot of winning.
Yeah. Marjan could use a change of scenery. There's no doubt about that. Put him on a young team where he can get some playing time.
Yep.
Kind of what they did with God, I forgot his name. Traded him to the Spurs. Mamu Kelishvili.
Oh, Sandro.
Yeah, Sandro. Pat Connaughton is an expiring contract. I love Pat. Don't get me wrong, but it just makes the trade work. And Bobby Portis, I love you too, man, but I had to throw some money out there. Get Bobby on a bad team again, try to fill some seats, but he could bring some toughness to that team, because the toughness they have right now is fake tough, because Isaiah Stewart is just a thug out there, basically.
Dirty.
But Bobby Portis is clean toughness, and he can give some energy to that city and that basketball team that they need. So I think this trade works for both teams.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that. Also a big fan of Jalen Duran. Would love to have the opportunity to have him and Brook Lopez on the same team.
Yeah, he's good. He would be fantastic.
There was some rumors of last summer possibly a swap involving those two. But if you can do it with a way to keep Brook Lopez and still get Jalen Duran, I'd be ecstatic.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about the 2 athletic lob threat players that I came up with. I have a couple power forwards here. The first one that I have is not as sexy, but it's Bruno Fernando for Marjan Beauchamp.
I almost did Bruno Fernando.
Dude, he wants to dunk everything.
Yeah, he does.
He wants to dunk everything. He does not shoot threes, but man, if that guy gets in the paint, then he doesn't want to punch on the rim, not Isaiah Stewart.
Yes.
So essentially, he can hit mid-range a little bit, but he is absolutely an athletic lob threat. He, like I said, he wants to dunk every single basketball that he touches. The next one that I have is Brandon Clark and 2 second-round picks for Bobby Portis.
Okay.
The more I thought about this one, it made a little bit more sense to me because whether or not Ja Morant is missing an extended period of time, having another guy that can score is never going to be a bad thing for Memphis.
Okay.
Brandon Clark to the Bucks and those 2 second-round picks gives the Bucks a couple more assets should they want to make another deal, and it gives them that athletic lob threat. And Brandon Clark is a pretty decent defensive power forward as well.
Yeah.
So in my mind, this checks a lot of boxes for both teams, and I think this is probably my favorite trade out of the ones that I've come up with.
All right, I got one more. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So I have a trade with New Orleans Pelicans.
Is it for Herb Jones?
It's Herb Jones and Daniel Tice.
Fuck Daniel Tice. I hate that.
I know. But when you hear my reasoning, you're going to be like, okay, that makes sense.
I poached one of their young guys in one of the Herb Jones trades that I made up. But you said Herb Jones. The floor is yours. I'm all on board already.
So Herb Jones obviously would be a tremendous asset for the Bucks. He'd be the perimeter defender. He could be a paint defender. He could be a lob threat. He could do a lot of things. He would literally be the perfect trade piece for the Bucks this year.
Yep.
You can just be like, hey, guard that guy, grab that rebound, run the floor with Giannis, and we're going to have 2 of the longest people that could jump the farthest in the NBA on one team, and it's going to be unstoppable.
Yep.
Giannis and Herb Jones at the 4 and 5, I don't think people would be ready for
that. I'd be ecstatic.
So I have Bobby, Marjan, DeLon, and Chris Livingston to New Orleans Pelicans, and the reason that I have this is because they have so much money tied up at the top. I mean, they just traded for Dejounte Murray. They're paying a lot of money to Zion. They're on they just have so much money on top. I think the top 3 guys are all making $30 million.
Yeah. That's part of the reason why they're trying to move CJ McCollum.
Yeah, and that's why they're trying to move CJ McCollum. But I think they're this close to blowing it all up, dude, especially the Zion project.
And Brandon Ingram.
So the reason I added Daniel Tyson there is because when you lose Bobby, I understand you get Herb Jones. You need a guy that could stretch the floor and set good screens, which Bobby does from time to time. But Daniel Tice is a good screen setter. He could set good screens for Damian Lillard, and he could pick and pop. So I'm not a big fan of Daniel Tice either, but schematically, when I thought about it, I was like, God damn it, he makes a lot of sense on the Bucks.
When you bring up the screens, that part of it makes sense. I don't think the Bucks could do the deal the way that you have it constructed because it has to be even player for player. So when I was coming up with a Herb Jones trade, the one that I had was Herb Jones, and I forget the guy's name because it was a mouthful. But if you look at the Pelicans, who are 15th in the West, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah, they're real close to blowing it up, dude.
Herb Jones and Carlo Matkovic.
Okay.
It was Bobby Portis, Marjan Beauchamp, and our 2031 first-round pick.
Okay.
And that trade works money-wise and player-wise because then it's 2 for 2, and you add in picks.
Yeah, I added DeLon right in there because they could probably use another point guard. I wanted to add Jose Alvarado because I think that he could be a tool the Bucks could use every once in a while too, especially when they want to run full-court pressure.
Yeah.
I think he'd be really good for that, but I just really want Herb Jones in a Bucks uniform, whatever that takes.
Could not agree with you more.
If they could keep the top 4 of Brooke, Chris, Dame, and Giannis, and you add in a Herb Jones, that roster competes with Boston. Quite frankly. I mean,
I agree with you. So I'll see what I can do if I can maybe put some graphics together on these potential trades, make sure they all work out and everything.
Yep.
And see if we can get them posted, see what people think. But
yeah,
not to be biased, but I think my Bobby Portis for Brandon Clark in a couple seconds, I think is the one that would be.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I like it.
Alrighty, so we will be back next week. We'll have more Bucks games. We have 3 more Bucks games, and I believe we only have 1 Badger game for next week. So, anything else Bucks related, we'll also discuss that next week as well. And then we will also be back on Tuesday to discuss Packers Bears and their preview for whoever they're going to be playing in the first round of the playoffs. So make sure to join us for that, and stay tuned. Probably this evening we're going to be posting some better habits for 2025 to make you a better sports fan, a more optimistic sports fan. And these things will be able to benefit you for life as well, not just for sports. So keep an eye out for that as well. And we will talk to you guys next week, and go Bucks.